People tend to humanize the dog. They tend to allow the animal to fill the voids within their life. It's like very, very predictable, actually. And I get it that that's like a natural tendency, but it's actually not of greatest service to self or the dog.
Hello, and welcome to Holistic Ambition, where we talk with visionary leaders who are redefining what it means to be ambitious. We cover ways you can live with more well-being, meaning, and fun in your career, business, and relationships. Today, we have Ryan Matthews with us. He is a K9 Mentalist who has combined his military canine handling experience and proven dog training methods to successfully transform the behavior of more than 3,000 dogs. By using his K9 Mentalist methods during dog training, Ryan has earned nearly $1 million in under 3 years. As a celebrity dog trainer, Ryan has been featured in TEDx talks, books, reality TV guest spots, and public appearances. Ryan has dedicated his life to improving the quality of life of dogs and their owners. Oh my goodness, I'm so curious about how someone like yourself begins to establish this expertise. Has your relationship with dogs always been a really special one?
It started with horses. When I was 5 years old, Stephanie, my mom took me to visit this horse, of all things, in the city. It wasn't like we were out in the country. And I remember the connection and looking into that animal's eyes. And horses are very much energetic beings. And so that's actually kind of like what sparked, excuse me, that interest with animals. And from there, it just gradually grew and grew and grew. So it started with horses. I never had dogs growing up. My first dog was a military working dog back in 2002, a dog trained to attack and search for drugs. That was the first dog I ever had, actually.
Whoa. Okay. So that's so cool. Unexpected. Because I was almost thinking that you're going to be like, when I was 2 years old, I had this dog.
Right.
But okay. So horses is kind of how it began. So it sounds like for you, it was more about having this intrinsic connection with animals. And then in your military career, being sort of gifted, like, here's a dog to help you with the work that you're doing. And can you describe what that relationship was like with that dog? Have you ever, was it an experience where you clicked right away? Was there a little bit of a, iffiness?
Mm, right. That's a deep question, Stephanie, because the we it's a mirror, right? In life, things are a mirror, and the animal as well. So the animal, I could only see the animal as deep as I was able to go within self. And because I hadn't started the work on self, no, I would say that honestly, the relationship was very surface. I was more in my head, not my heart, not my soul. And I was more about, how do I not get bit by this dog trying to attack? And how do I facilitate this dog's learning and growth and that kind of stuff? And so, no, the connection was, I would say, and relationship was surface initially. It wasn't until I began to work on myself at a really deep and soulful level that the way I look at dogs has absolutely transformed. And it's something that gives you the chills.
Yeah. Okay. So, and again, this is already full of surprises where where you've actually grown to have this deep love and reverence and appreciation. So we were talking just before this that I watched your TEDx talk about, and I love this concept of treating people in our lives more like dogs. So, I'm curious if you could share, and of course, I encourage everyone listening to go ahead and look up the TEDx talk featuring Ryan Matthews. But what are some of the ways in which, what do you mean by that we should treat
Right.
people more like we treat dogs?
Well, it just came through observation and being in the homes of thousands of people and seeing how couples interact and then how they interact with their dog. And there's a huge contrast. And to me, it's kind of crazy. Uh, my dog is my world, Zeus, right? He sleeps in bed with me. He's on the side of my car. I have a car wrap. Like, he's everything to me. And at the same time, I honor him as an animal. But I find that we tend to humanize dogs. And so what I mean by this idea of, if we were to treat each other the way that we treat dogs, like, what would our life be like? Essentially, it's like this. When we come into the house to visit a friend, a family member, or our significant other coming home, who do we acknowledge first? And who do we acknowledge with the most level of enthusiasm? Is it the person or is it the dog? But the dog is getting that attention, and that's beautiful. But I don't feel that we should be valuing a dog more than we should each other. And
Yeah.
that's
Oh no, continue.
yeah, so that's like the biggest thing for me. I find that people tend to humanize the dog. They tend to allow the animal to fill the voids within their life. It's like very, very predictable, actually. And and I get it that that's like a natural tendency, but it's actually not of greatest service to self or the dog, because we're just masking the thing underneath the thing, as one of my healers calls it, right? And so again, if we can just honor the animal and then honor each other, if we could be enthusiastic when we meet each other like we do a dog, if we can love others unconditionally like we do a dog, because but then what happens, right, in life, there's like we get hurt, so then we hold back, and then that love is not conditional. So that's some of what I mean by, if we would treat each other as humans the way we treat these animals, loving unconditionally, being enthusiastic with our partners or the people in our lives, like how valued would they feel?
Yeah, and this kind of brings up the personal growth journey um, that you touched on earlier, that really took you from a place of having this iffy relationship with this dog that was assigned to you more or less. I'm curious if you found in that specific relationship that you were able to cultivate, a sense of deep reverence, like during that canine relationship, or if it happened over the course of working with a few different dogs.
Oh, it took thousands. To be fair, I've been a slow learner in life, and I would, and I believe in speaking our truth, and I only like to go deep. So I hope I have permission to do that with you and your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although I've been a so-called man in the age of a man, the truth, Stephanie, is I've been a boy most of my life, right? And so, no, I showed up as a boy, not as a man, not as in the soul that really honored that animal in front of me. Again, it wasn't until I did the work within deep within itself that I was able to see the dog in a different way. And there's something really sad that even now, like it breaks my heart within the working dog um and like the military working dog community, both civilian and military. And that's that these dogs are like a tool for us to use for a purpose of maybe finding people for search and rescue, finding explosives, searching for cancer. But sadly, like these dogs are kind of used as a tool. And that's part of why I play in the pet dog training space now. I don't do working dog stuff because that hurt. It really did. The fact that we're leaving these dogs kenneled for so long, and and then they get to work, and then that's it. They're back in the kennel. And so that kind of also didn't allow me to honor the animal as I would like
Yeah. And I mean, gosh, that's a whole topic in itself,
to. Yeah.
sort of military mindset of doing what you're told, like not a lot of emphasis on emotional intelligence. Maybe that is shifting in modern times. So I'm curious to learn about maybe how being in, service in that way sort of inspired this growth journey, or maybe it was after the fact. And then I'd love to know how you turned around that relationship with a dog, if you maybe have an example of when you realized, wow, like there is a deep connection that you were able to actually begin to cultivate.
Okay, I love it. Well, I'll say this, that it wasn't until I began to look into different forms of healing and different modalities and working with shamans and Reiki people and these types of things that I actually now I can channel. Now it's not like a Esther Abraham Hicks thing where boom, I can do it. It just comes naturally, and I don't even know when it's going to come. I can start to feel the energy of it, but I can channel with dogs often, and that's been a game changer. And it's been a really beautiful experience to be able to do that. And I'm able to get these downloads to share with the pet owners that they appreciate. And it's crazy because like I'll get messages about them in their personal life. It's really interesting.
Okay, so are these things that the dog is observing, or because dogs are super attuned? I mean, if you've ever looked into a dog's eyes, I know when I was younger, if I wasn't feeling very great, I mean, it's great to have fun with the dog and play, but if you're feeling down, just dogs know. They will rest their head in your lap. They're like, I am here for you,
Yeah.
need emotionally. So yeah, if we could kind of go into that channeling piece, which is very interesting, that intuitive piece that you were able to activate.
You know what I find is that people just talk a lot, right? Oh, da 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 with the dog, but then that not much comes to us when we're talking. The downloads come in meditation, right? The downloads come in silence. And so for me, I can train a dog without ever saying anything, right? If we can just tap into the energy and the body language, you'll be amazed at what can happen. And so, yeah, they're very much, and horses are this way as well. They're even more sensitive, but dogs are very much reading body language like humans, 90 something percent. So that's kind of interesting. So it's not always about what you say, it's how you say it. And it's also about your presentation that makes it believable to the dog. But all of our body language and our energy is cueing the dog as to where we are. And again, some dogs are into pleasing people, but others, people don't know this, others just want to please themselves. And guess what? People too. Like I read it on your face.
That's very interesting.
You saw that. You had the same thought, right? That people can be the same.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting. Yeah, because I guess there is this stereotype of dogs as servants, but certainly there are the dogs that are disobedient, that maybe they're in a role to be of service, but they're like, F this, I actually would rather just play, you know? So I'm curious when it comes to this topic of, disobedient dogs. This is through the lens of someone that has a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really popular. I grew up with German Shepherd dogs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, to take them to obedience school, right?
Okay.
To make sure that there aren't quote unquote bad habits, that they're quote unquote disciplined, and all of that stuff. It's socialization more or less, and some dogs take to it more than others. So yeah, just when it comes to, if you could speak to particular to dogs, what are the most common or most interesting instances of disobedience, and maybe how you help transform that through your dog training?
All right. Well, I love your question, by the way. This is something that I've been playing with recently, and it's about leash reactivity. Leash reactivity is really big. It's very common. And I was like, I'm a why person. I'm very curious, probably like yourself. And I was like, okay, well, I see this trend, but then why? Like, why is this leash reactivity happening? And then, well, why does it matter? Like trauma too, right? Like getting rid of the old story and this and that, right? At the same time, I'm like, well, if I can understand the why, then I can educate the masses on if you do this, this will equal this result, this outcome. So I felt it was my duty with what I know and who I am in the industry that I got to crack the code on this. And so I feel really confident that I have. And so for me, this is really exciting. And this is something new that I went out to go and seek. Like, what is the deal with leash reactivity? Now, if people are listening, they don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about you're walking your dog on the leash and the dog becomes what appears to be aggressive. It could just be excitement, but it appears aggressive, barking, lunging, wanting to maybe snap in the air on the leash at a dog or a person or something like that. That's what we're talking about, okay, is leash reactivity. But what I found, and I'm 100% so far in this study, that this leash reactivity gets created in just a few ways. And if anyone has a leash reactive dog listening to this, I really want you to pay attention. And at some point, you're probably going to nod your head. Number one, these are people that will do what we all want to do because we're thinking here with our hearts, and that's beautiful, but we got to set the dog up for success. So what we do is we walk the block and we have our dog meet another dog or person on leash. And you would think, well, how would that's socializing the dog, right? In your mind. However, there's other variables. what is the experience the animal has? The leash is likely tight because you're not aware of your leash pressure. So it's feeling something on the neck, right? That's not pleasurable. That's no different than you pulling me by my collar on my shirt, pulling me back if I'm trying to say hello to someone. It's an oppositional reflex. You pull back, they want to go forward. And so the meet and greets on leash in the neighborhood is one. Because then what happens is the dog gets frustrated that they're not always able to say hi. Okay. And so the other part is this. Do we go up to, if we walk the neighborhood, do we talk to our neighbors all the time and just, or someone we don't know, better said? No. Overall, no. Sometimes we do, yes. But I encourage people to focus on the energy. We tend to let our dogs meet everybody that asks. No, I want to talk to you first. What's your vibe and what's your energy? Do I want that on my dog? Because that's going to stick. And do I want that on me? Because they're leaving something with us there, right? And that's something people don't think about. So the other thing that people do is they bring their dog to the dog park. And you're like, well, that makes them more social. Right. But what's the energy and what is the play look like? Sometimes I have clients, I'm like, yeah, well, we take our dog to the dog park, but I don't know if she likes it. I'm like, well, explain. And they're like, well, the dog hides behind me. I'm like, yeah, the dog doesn't like that. Right. And so you're breaking the trust. And so people need to stop taking dog to dog parks. So those are two examples that if people will stop, this leash reactivity will actually just go away and it won't even exist. So no dog parks and no meet and greets on leash. Unless the dog is very, very calm, I encourage people to actually just walk together without the dog sniffing and playing on leash. Just walk together, promote calm, then they can interact because you have time to bond.
Yeah. This image is coming to mind. Have you ever seen, you've probably seen these images of dogs walking themselves where they have their leash and then they carry it in their mouth
Oh,
and
yeah.
the owner's just behind them, kind of like, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
they're taking themselves on a walk. So is that a result of, let's say, the owner, like, yeah, can you kind of, if you were to succinctly say like two tips, related to establishing trust and how it ties in with those dogs that can do that and they can be trusted, like what would that be?
Well, the secret to not just the dogs, but any dogs. So my system is about three things, and I'll give two of those three because it's relevant to what you just asked. Number one, leadership. So often we are not being the leader of our dogs. Well, I want us all to think about like our workplace environment or whatever it is that we do professionally. Like, how important is it for us to feel secure to follow that leader? And then think about who that leader needs to be. They need to be fair. They need to be consistent, not overly emotional, reliable. You can count on them. They're trustworthy. Then you're like, I can follow you. Right. So if we are our dog's leader, because dogs are born to follow, but so many households, the dog is leading the show. The dog is the first one out the door. Someone comes into the house, the dog greets that person first. It's like, whoa, hold on, whose house is this? See, the problem is that we have a problem with boundaries, and we have a problem with speaking our truth. And oh, well, it's okay to, and we justify. No, like let's live freely for ourselves and for our dog. And so leadership is one of the ways that we get that. So my dog's off leash all the time. I live 3 blocks from the beach in Huntington. Yesterday we went to the beach, and Zeus is crossing Pacific Coast Highway, a very busy, like almost a freeway, no leash. Okay. He gets freedom because of my leadership, and I'm looking out for him. So leadership is one. And secondly, energy. The dogs that have that leash, they have that head down. That's not fear or anything. It's calm, it's respect, it's in flow state. And that owner also walks with chin up, chest out, a level of confidence. So if we'll be our dog's leaders, and if we will possess an energy that feels safe and comfortable and certain, I call it like animal energy, right? So when someone comes to the door, our dog's all frantic, and then we're like, our energy is on our heels. So why would the dog listen to you? You have to bring on an energy that's believable for the animal to take you seriously. So you have to believe in self as well. So leadership and energy are two things that are massive, massive secrets, and a way that people can have almost immediate control and a better relationship with their dog.
Yeah. And, I can totally see this whole, training the trainer. We'll talk about that in a bit, how this comes into play, because being a leader, that's a whole thing, feeling worthy of leading and embodying the leadership skills and capabilities that empower your dog to actually feel confident themselves versus always looking to you in fear, like, oh my gosh, what should I do? It's more like everyone, yeah, it's this sort of symbiotic relationship, back to the energy piece that you mentioned. And even thinking of, let's say that there is a dog who has a bad habit, like people can have some bad habits.
Mhm.
When I think of the word dog whisperer, that term, I think of, transforming behavior. So do you have any stories or examples of, let's say, a dog that had a perpetual habit? They say you can't teach a dog new tricks, but I'd
Yeah.
like for you to share if you have had another experience.
Yeah, like literally 2 days ago. So I won't say any names, but I I met with, this is a really cool situation, um, and also not, because it was a beautiful show of like one's love and dedication to the animal. So I met with this person who needs to rehome her dog. She's not able to have the dog live with her. The dog has increasingly got very aggressive. It's bit her kids, her ex-husband, it bit her dad, and then it has a few other bites. When I went to the house, the dog was pretty ballistic and tried to bite me too. It was pretty bad. And we did what's called a board and train. So we took the dog and we trained it. Lives with one of my trainers. And within 24 hours, it was a different dog. And no muzzle on. It was before it would lunge and try to bite guys. And then it was able to be next to my trainer's boyfriend, didn't go after him within 3 feet, wasn't even wearing a muzzle. Now that's like a really profound and incredible transformation. And the training's not done. We're just starting. But it goes to show how when we can get out of a certain environment, what's possible. Because see, what happened was this owner inflated the dog's ego, reinforced the dog's insecurities, reinforced her own insecurities, and then gave the dog, knowingly and unknowingly, the job of protector. So that's what it did.
Yeah.
Right? So the dog, this is fun and deep. The dog will also reflect our truth. So quite often I'll have like, I work with a lot of females, tend to be clients. I don't know why, but they'll be like, my dog doesn't like guys. So I'll say, okay, what's your stance on men? Oh, ha ha ha, and then they laugh. I'm like, yeah, what's underneath the laugh? Like, let's play. I'm like, yeah, well, no, I get it. Like, yeah, I haven't had the best luck or whatever. It's like the dog will mirror our truth, which I think is beautiful because it's an opportunity for us to look at opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And so this is even, I mean, there are certainly overlaps. I'm thinking of childhood development, how, it's not uncommon for parents to project certain things onto their children. So this also translates into pets and dogs. And, this brings up an example of, let's say that someone has a dog, and they encounter someone who's really afraid, maybe not specifically of their dog, but of dogs in general, or maybe someone listening to this is like, I'm low-key afraid too of like every dog, because maybe there was one experience, maybe it's more of a phobia where there wasn't a direct experience, but there's just this fear. How this is twofold. How would you advise someone to handle dogs that they're afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
And how can people like work with their dogs to have them be less intimidating or scary?
Okay. Um, so as part of my train the trainer course, there was this client that came to do some training, and she had a little dog. And then I noticed, ooh, wow, her thing is so strong that I felt emotion even as I start to talk about it. That's how powerful her stuff was. As soon as I brought my dog out, which is a Belgian Malinois, he's like 75 pounds, I saw her lock up and like she got frantic. And he's off leash, right? Because he has a lot of freedom. So he just roams around. He's like, having a good time and stuff. And I was just like, oh. I'm like, hey, are you afraid of big dogs or something? She's like, yeah. And so I said, well, today you're going to start to overcome that. Right. So before you know it, I had her walking my dog. But what I do in dog training, and I think this is great in life, is I chunk things and I simplify them. So I call it simple to complex. Right. And so first, like I walked Zeus on a leash so she felt safe. And then she was off like 10 feet away. And then I said, come a little closer, come a little closer, come gradually, gradually. And then I would like pet him and do some tricks. And she's like starting to have her chill out. And eventually she was able to walk with him. And she's holding the leash and she even pet him. And so I think that we can absolutely overcome things. One of my business partners, he got into dog training because he was attacked by a dog as a kid. But I think it's really about facing that thing, right? Or to keep showing up. And so, anyways, I find that a simple to complex approach works for dogs and could work for people. Like in therapy, they call it flooding or prolonged exposure, which means like say someone's afraid of clowns. So like, okay, you're going to sit in the room and here comes 20 clowns. Well, I think we could do a version of that and simplify it and be fair. Like maybe you just put out like a clown shoe into them and then you grow it, right? Simple to complex. So that's the first answer. And then what was the second part? I'm sorry, I missed it of your question.
So I'll actually kind of rephrase it. So I'd actually like to also talk about nervous dogs, especially in the
Yeah.
community. Let's say dogs that are really skittish, where you don't know what happened, but you can guess that something happened to them. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know what? Of all the years, I rarely ever get this question. And I think it's so valuable. So I'm so glad that you asked it. And I really, really hope that people will really tune in and listen to this right now because this is a game changer. Like really, everyone, please just catch this point. Dogs' behavior doesn't show up immediately. It's a gradual and incremental process of like 0.5% over years. Okay. So the dog maybe wasn't initially fearful or wasn't initially aggressive. What I need everybody to know is like dogs are persuasive, even a bit manipulative to push their agenda along. And we buy it. And so that's, again, not healthy for the relationship nor the leadership. And so my point is this: these fearful dogs will act fearful. And we, out of our hearts, make sense. We go and console the dog. Now, the dog perceives that as praise. So when the animal perceives praise, we are reinforcing whatever's happened. So like, for example, if a dog sits and it's a puppy and we want it to, that's what we want. What do? We give food or we pet him and we say, you're a good dog. So why? Because we want more sit. Well, what if the dog is fearful and we do the same approach? What do? You get more fear. So what's the solution through that? Starts with self. Great energy within self, great leadership to say, hey, babe, I get it. This is scary. We're not going to play there. You're going to meet me on this vibration and we're going to be over here. And you lovingly and intelligently, incrementally, simple to complex, put the dog into stimuli. Again, simple, not extreme. And then gradually. So when I say simple to complex, it would be like very far away, gradually closer, something like that. And so we are conditioning the thing that we don't want. And I can't stress that enough because I see it a lot. And it's counterintuitive. I get it. But friends, if we really love our animals, and we do, then we got to do the right thing by them by understanding them and not thinking as though they're people, because they are animals, even though they seem so human.
I think that's a really great point because we have been drawing a lot of parallels between, even babies and puppies and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, there is a stark difference. And you bring up this idea that's it seems like it's almost equivalent to this concept of learned helplessness, where the behavior of being skittish is maybe positively reinforced by well-meaning people, where maybe this dog is used to, having some sort of negative thing happen to them physically, perhaps. And then even when they're in a safe environment, then it can become, oh, wait, when I flinch, then I'm cradled, then I'm given positive affirmations. I can totally understand how that could almost become, a way that they begin or kind of default to. So I think that's
Right.
a really great point that you brought up there. And when it comes to, I definitely want to get into the business side of things a little bit of how you go from not having a great relationship with dogs to then
Mm.
building up your relationship and then making this into a business where now you help other people. But before we kind of switch gears a little bit, I'd like to hear about just a fun example of a quirky dog story. Like I can even share one of my parents' dogs, in recent years used to chew on metal. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
really, there was no explanation for it, but just like for fun. And, I don't know that in that dog's lifetime, they were able to successfully train that out. And
Mm.
it seemed kind of like a little bit funny and quirky. They weren't hurting themselves, but it was kind of just like a little thing they would do. So,
Mm.
or maybe it is more serious. I don't know if you have more information on that, but if you can think of any quirks and how that process was of kind of massaging out the quirk.
Okay, so great question again. God, I appreciate and just really love your mind. Thank you for these questions because
Sure.
I get such generic stuff. So this is really fun for me. I want to say that shepherd, I'm kind of interested to see more and know more. I've seen a behavior, I've seen elements of this. And then what I do is I like to know more because again, I'm curious.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm kind of feeling like potentially a little OCD in that dog. For a dog to like, it's a texture thing, probably, but it could also be what we call displacement behavior, which is like, so maybe say when I see you and I go on video, I start biting my fingernails. It's
Mm.
like, it's just a display. It's an expression of a nervousness, if you will. Yeah. So dogs do that. But what I find is, and this is kind of interesting, dogs definitely have OCD. I'm not saying all do, but they can have it. And it shows up in a way of like people can create it by playing with the laser pointer on the floor. That can actually will create an OCD in a dog. Next thing you know, your dog starts to chase shadows on the wall.
Mm.
Next thing you know, your dog is excessively licking its paws all the time. And again, I want us to think about the state of mind. So those are some of the quirky things that I've seen. I've also seen it where dogs on their own have like want to put their toys away in a basket, like not even trained, like the dog did it themselves. I think that one was kind of fun and kind of interesting as well. But it's something quirky that I see is like OCD, which I think it's sad and it's unfortunate, and I think we should do something about it to again help the dog's state of mind and help their soul.
Yeah, what a useful reframe that dogs' quirks. Sometimes people that don't know any better could be like, oh, that's interesting, or that's even, funny, when really it's an opportunity to get curious and understand like, is this actually something that is pleasurable for the dog? If not, then maybe it's a coping mechanism because they're going through something. So I think that's a really valuable point. And, I'm curious about what the turning point was for you when it came to, going from having what I imagine was something that became a passion and then going, 3 years, $1 million in business. I'm sure people listening right now, that's appealing for them, especially the entrepreneurial minded listeners. So I'm curious about what you identify as one of the points of takeoff.
Wow, ambition. That's been a big part of it. Having a work ethic, having some fire, right? Um, Really for me, so geez, I've always been interested in business, and just to be clear, like I'm actually a business person first. I'm a dog trainer second. Like there's most dog trainers don't do too well because they're dog trainers first and then they're business people. But I take a different approach. Um, but for me, it's been a gradual and incremental process for sure. But I would say the takeoff for me was absolutely bringing on others to help me with my vision. That really was a game changer. And also being very clear on what it is that I desire.
Hmm.
Right. And so I kind of like my success was met with where I believed I was worthy of achieving. Right. And that's what would, and so I would hit my KPI, but then I would gradually raise it. And now it's like, no, now for me, like I kind of, I kind of run things where, like, even for me, it's hard to believe I charge what I charge for what I do. And and I think that's kind of a good thing, because if we're too comfortable, I don't know that we're really moving forward within self. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then the other part of it is like feeling very valued too, right? It's easy to justify and make all these other stuff, but then like really, what's deeper? Um, yeah, but for me, it was really this just showing and having appreciation for dogs and all that they've done for me in so many things, right? Like from the suicide stuff many years ago to loving self to loving others. Dogs helped me with all of that. And so for me, I'm like, no, I'm forever grateful. What can I do for you? So there's other vision that I have down the road for how I'm going to give back to the canine community down the road. But for now, I'm like, what are some really tragic things? So for me, one of them is dogs return to the shelter. Like there is a lot of that. And it's usually because people don't know how to handle and manage their dog. So you have a frustrated dog owner and confused dogs, right? All just from not knowing. And so for me, I was like, well, how do I stop them getting to the shelter? And I was like, well, training is the solution. But I'm like, well, Ryan's only one person. And when I was doing 10 people per day, I ended up getting cancer and a heart attack when I was 30 years old. And that's when I was like, I can't keep doing this at this pace by myself. Like, I'm going to kill myself when I'm trying to just help. So that's when I was like, excuse me, I got to create an army, create a tribe of others that want to do the same. So we can have greater impact, help more people, and keep more dogs out of shelters and reducing euthanasia. And so that was, again, one of the catalysts for me. Once I became very crystal clear on that mission, then it became really easy. Like for now, creating the train the trainer and improving the program with every cohort and every person, it's fun because I know the mission.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing this integration of head and heart where, of course, there's this giving back factor of these of dogs in general and how they've really helped you through some darker times while also keeping the business acumen and mindset first and foremost so that you're not martyring yourself,
Mm.
literally dying of a heart attack or something because you're simply overexerting your human self. And there's power in numbers. I hear entrepreneurs all the time say, if I could just multiply myself, it's like, or you could trust other people, train them. That's like another way to think about it. And when it comes to, you have had a couple of TEDx talks, one that's focused on, dogs specifically, the other that's more personal development journey focused. And then there's also, of course, your book, The K9 Connection. You're working on another book, Reality TV. So I'm curious if any one of those things in particular you can identify as being the most impactful credibility marker when it comes to people that either hire you to help with their dog or people that come to you that would like to become a trainer.
Mm. Geez, another really good question. I think that I'll say this. I think for all of us that are business people that want to be and that are subject matter experts, like if you're like, hey, I'm right there, I feel like I'm an expert, like I really know my field, I'm at the top of my field, but I'm not being recognized, write a book. Like, absolutely write a book. I think nowadays it's expected if you're a subject matter expert, you have to have a book. So I think that that's one piece of it. And it definitely builds the credibility, and it also shows that I don't just kind of do dog training. It's like, no, not only do I do dog training, but here's all what's inside my mind. Here it is in the book, and that's certainly building credibility. And then the other one was the TEDx talks as well. And how did I come to this, right? People want to know these things. Like, I just studied people. So when I'd go networking, I would say, I'm working on a TEDx talk. But it wasn't even secured for me to have one. Like, it was just something that I was like, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. But what I did, Stephanie, was I studied the reaction of people when I said that. And then I learned, I was like, just studying, like, what does society value? And so based upon people's responses and reactions, I was like, yeah, for sure, this is something I'm pursuing. Because it will make me more credible, even though I don't feel like I need it. But society seems to need these things to be able to have enough trust and move forward and yada, yada, yada. And so that's okay. I'm just honoring where they're at. And so, yeah, the book and the TEDx talks were, I'd say, the biggest things.
Wonderful. And, it's this storytelling, right? It's being able to put everything on paper, original thought leadership, and then to be able to speak it in a compelling way, which you do both beautifully. And if you want to even take a moment to share, do you want to show what your workbook looks like for those that are tuning in to the video portion? Yeah. Just because it's beautiful cool. And it's really robust. I want people to see it.
So I just want to share this for all the entrepreneurs. Like, I'm not a designer, but I hire people where I'm weak. So we don't need to make excuses about why we can't do something. So it's kind of cool. There's like talking about business and stuff. But yeah, graphically, I think the person did a really good job and stuff. So it's 200 pages. And I created it, Stephanie, because some of us like to read. Some of us want to watch videos. And some of us want to do hands-on. And so my program is all of those things so that I can honor each person's learning style. And they have that resource for moving forward after they graduate and stuff. And so I think that's super important, to honor people where they're at and acknowledge their learning style so that we can get them what they need and go make awesome things happen.
And that's full circle, when it comes to training a dog, when it comes to training a human. So, I have a few questions before we wrap up, but so is that workbook, is it available outside of the training, or is that exclusively for trainers?
It's only for people that commit to my Train the Trainer program, which is essentially not a franchise, but it's kind of ran like one, where people own a territory of World of Dog Training, and I help them make $250,000 a year, training dogs, helping dogs and their pet owners. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So, anyone right now that loves dogs, and, I know an extended family member at one point was, wanting to do dog Reiki. It wasn't really sustainable from an income perspective. So yeah, I think that this is such a cool opportunity for people to plug into. And, I'm curious how you define ambition.
Fire and work ethic.
Fire and work ethic. And what does holistic ambition mean to you?
So the holistic part is something that it comes naturally. You don't have to try. It's just embodies you. And I think that we get there through that purpose and that mission. It's like, no, I'm not trying. I'm just living out my mission. And oh, look, I'm doing all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm applying passion, fire, and strong work ethic.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's this fire and passion and being led by it intuitively. And I think that's been woven throughout this conversation as well. And how can people stay connected with you? How can they learn more about you?
Sure. So the website has a lot of information, worldofdogtraining.com. And then Instagram, people can DM or see what I'm doing. And that's at World of Dog Training. And the website, same thing, worldofdogtraining.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ryan Matthews, for your time today. There's so many nuggets of wisdom, and I'm sure that there's more where that came from. So anyone that wants to go ahead and check out, social media, worldofdogtraining.com. I'd like to thank you at home for watching and listening in, and consider this your invitation to subscribe to be the very first to know of the next Holistic Ambition speaker in our series. Wishing you a beautiful day. Until next time.